We're going to start with three major points of demonstration. Yes, it is true to give this properly, I should only give 1 point, and I should leave it with you for 3 months and then come back and take the second point, and then come back in 3 months and take the third point, but the world won't let me. So I have to give you 3 points at once and hope that you will put 2 of them aside. Don't try to demonstrate all 3. Take one at a time and fulfill yourself with one before you take up the other. And the first one is that idea of not seeking or chasing God or looking for God or searching for God, but make the acknowledgement, I have found God. The place whereon I stand is holy ground. Why? Because I'm there or because God is there? And that's very clear. The place whereon I stand is holy ground because God stands there. Why search for God that's standing in my shoes? The kingdom of God is within you. Then why search anymore? Just acknowledge. God is closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet. Why search anymore? Why seek? Why not make the acknowledgement? Thank you, Father. I and the Father are one, right here and now. The place whereon I stand is holy ground. It makes no difference if where I'm standing is hell. Please remember this, that at some time and some place in our experience, each of us stands in hell. It may be the hell of sin. It may be the hell of disease. It may be the hell of lack and limitation and unemployment, danger, insecurity. All of those things really are what we call hellish experiences, devilish experiences, horrid experiences. But they become transformed when you realize that even in the midst of this hell, thou art there. I still do not have to search for God or seek for God in hell, for thou art there. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Many people in their disease or near death believe that in some way they have become separated from God. And then they struggle and strive to find God. It's all wrong. That's all wrong. You are no further from God ever than you are from your own breathing, from your own being. You haven't gotten separated from God. You've merely let the word I, me, and mine get in too much and set up a sense of separation from God. That's not separation. That's like misunderstanding a friend and deciding never to talk to them again and cutting yourself off from them, and they're still your friend. You haven't cut yourself off from their friendship. You've just entertained a sense of separation. Now, the sense of separation will act as disastrously as separation itself. In other words, the moment you accept a sense of separation from God, it is as if you had no God. So the thing to overcome is not a separation from God, but the sense of separation. And there's one way and one way alone that you can overcome a sense of separation from God, and that is to acknowledge God's presence regardless of appearances. No matter what the appearance may be, roaring lions jumping into this room, gunmen jumping in and shooting off guns, or atomic bombs floating in air, those are the appearances that would tempt us to believe in a separation from God. Horrible sins, terrible diseases, these are the things that tempt us to believe in our separation from God, and we become victims of that belief. Now then, to give up the belief of separation, you have to do it in one way, and one way only, and there is no other way that's ever been discovered, And that is to acknowledge the activity and presence of God where I am. The Father in the midst of me doeth the works. Not the Father that I'm seeking or going to get at one with, not the Father that I'm searching for or hoping to attain or expect to be worthy of. No, no, no. The Father within me doeth the works when? Now, when I acknowledge it. Because of omnipresence. Omnipresence means always present. Is God omnipresent, or is God sometimes away somewhere? No, there's no place for God to be away to, since God fills all space. And since God fills all time and God fills all space, God is here where we are. And the only way to achieve the activity of God, the blessings of God, is to acknowledge, in spite of appearances, Thou art there. Thou art here. I shall not fear what man can do to me. I shall not fear what mortal man can do to me. I shall not fear what circumstance or condition can do to me. I shall not fear what anything, time or space, can do to me. I shall not fear any presence or any power in heaven, on earth, or in hell, for omnipresence is with me. The presence of God goes with me. The presence of God goes before me to make the crooked places straight. The presence of God remains behind me to bless all those who pass that way. The presence of God walks on each side of me, and that makes a complete omnipresence and a complete sense or consciousness of omnipresence. Now that is the first thing that must be achieved. Give up this chase. Give up the search for God and acknowledge, thank you, Father, I've reached. In the infinite way, in the last chapter, New Jerusalem, I am home in thee. It was a wonderful day in 1937 when that realization came. I am home in thee. Well, of course, I had never been away from home, but I didn't know it. It was on that day that I realized I am home. I didn't come home. I hadn't been any place. But I realized I am home in thee. Before this, I was a weary wanderer. I was a searcher for truth until 1937. Searching all over the place. And in the libraries, too. Thought he was in library shelves, especially metaphysical libraries. No. All the time God was in me and I was in God. But I've never regretted those years of search and those books either, and the time spent in them, because in the end they revealed that which had always been true, that I was home in thee. So let's not tear up those books yet or tear down the libraries yet. But at least let us realize what their function is. Their function isn't to give us God. Their function is to reveal that we are in God and God is in us. We live and move and have our being in God. So let us bless every activity that helps to reveal that to us. That is our point number one. And our point number two is to give up all idea of demonstration. Whether the demonstration is for employment, or income, or companionship, or home, even the desire for health and for sinlessness. Let's give it all up. Even the desire to be good and pure, let's give that up too. And let us translate everything into one desire, and that is to realize God's presence, to realize omnipresence, to realize that the place whereon I stand is holy ground, that all that the Father hath is mine. You know, after that statement, doesn't it seem strange to still be trying to make demonstrations? All that the Father hath is mine. only one demonstration to make, is the realization of that truth. So let us give up getting health or getting abundance, and let us get acquainted with God. At first, it's difficult to get acquainted with God because we think of God in terms of our concept of God. And that's why we never really get acquainted, because God isn't like that at all. God isn't like anything that we think God is. And so one of the desires that we have to give up is the desire for God in the way we think of God. Let us, in our giving up, let us give up the kind of a God that we have thought about or visualized or believed in. And let us accept God as God without any idea or outline of what it is we're going to meet when we do get acquainted with God. Because we're going to find a different kind of fellow than we ever thought about. It's a different experience. Those who have experienced God, while they can't tell you what that experience is like, they can tell you that God isn't like anything you think God is. And so, it is a good rule to know this. You don't know God. What you're entertaining is a concept of God, an idea of God. Oh, it may be Jesus' concept of God as Father or the Father within, or it may be Paul's concept of God as the Christ, but it's still concept. It's still concept. It may be yours, it may be your parents' concept, it may be your church's concept, and you may have given up your Orthodox Church's concept of God and accepted a metaphysical concept of God as mind or life or principle. Give those up too. All of those are facets of God. We can speak of God as love, but if we do, we're speaking of one of the tiniest little bits of God, because love is only one of the many ways in which God presents itself. We can speak of God as mind, but that can't be God, because mind is only one of the many, many ways in which God presents itself. We can speak of God as law, but God must be something more than law, because law is only one of the many ways in which God presents itself. So instead of thinking of God in some finite, limited way, let us realize that life, truth, love, substance, principle, law, soul, spirit, these are all ways in which God presents itself to us, but God is even greater than the sum total of all of them. And so let us go for the whole vision and not be concerned about what we think God is, or what we've been taught God is, or what our books say that God is. And let us turn with an open mind to the revelation of God, the unfoldment of God in our consciousness, and be prepared for it in whatever form it may appear. And be assured of this, to each one it will come in a different way. There will be again the story of the 4 blind men who had climbed up on an elephant, and each was describing the elephant to the others. One had caught hold of his tail, of course, and was telling the others that the elephant was like a heavy piece of rope. And the other one had caught hold of the legs, and he was explaining that an elephant is so wide that you can't get both arms around him, and so thick and so heavy that you can't move it. But the other one had caught hold of a tusk, and he was saying, why, no, it isn't like that at all. It's cold, and it's hard, and so forth and so on. And so each blind man told what the elephant was from his viewpoint. But the elephant actually was more than the sum total of all those things. And so it is with God. I could tell you some of the things and some of the ways in which I've caught glimpses of God, but it would be very incomplete, very imperfect, because I have no way of explaining allness. You have no way of explaining allness, and allness will appear to you one day, one way, and another day another way. So let us forget our ideas or concepts of God and turn to the revelation of God itself. Let us turn away from all forms of God like health and abundance and good, and get acquainted with God. Acquaint now thyself with Him and be at peace. For you know that if you're to be at peace, you will have health, wealth, harmony, and all the other things too, or you wouldn't have peace. So to get at peace means to get acquainted with God. Then all these things will be added. Now our third point today is put on the armor of oneness. This is one of the greatest points in all spiritual teaching. It is one that is only touched on in the very highest spiritual teachings. It is a revelation of God as one, not a statement of God as one, a revelation of God as one. In other words, when we speak of oneness, we're speaking of God's power as the only power, not as a power that you use over evil powers or to overcome sin or disease with, but as one. In other words, to put on the armor of oneness means to be like David going out to meet Goliath. It means to take off that heavy armor of defense, because there's no power out there to defend yourself against. And then he proved that Goliath was not a power. He was just a braggart. Because without any armor, in the world sense of armor, and without any of what the world calls its weapons, Goliath is destroyed. The least of these things, a little pebble. No armor, no protection. Now to go out into the world with the armor of oneness means to go out without the sword of offense or the armor of defense. It means to go out without affirmations or denials. Oh, you see, when we were in the realm of armor and swords, that was easy. But now when we come to giving up affirmations and denials, that gets more difficult. But those are weapons of offense and defense. We are trying with our affirmations and denials to destroy sin, disease, death, lack, and limitation. And there isn't any. There isn't any. There's no reality to it. Those are appearances that tempt us into a battle. First, the battle is with armor and swords and guns and bombs. And as you get to be a metaphysician and go into the mental realm, the battle is with thoughts and affirmations and denials. Do you see that? Now, we haven't put on the armor of oneness until we've agreed that God, this is the first commandment of the Ten Commandments and the first of the Master's commandments. God is the only presence and the only power. Now, as you go out into the world with that, God is one. One life that doesn't have to be saved. One life that doesn't have to be healed. God is one soul that doesn't have to be purified. God is one substance, so there's no bad substance, no evil substance, no too much substance, no too little substance. So you don't need any words to change substance with, or thoughts, any more than you need things. God is one substance. God is the only activity, so there is no evil activity. So we need neither swords, nor armor, nor words, nor thoughts of offense or defense, since God is the only activity. And who is there to fear God's activity? Oh, yes, you're going to be tempted. Oh, certainly. Maybe at the first street corner is going to be a man standing with a gun to hold us up. And that is our first temptation, either to use physical might to overpower him or to use mental might. But spiritual truth says, stand ye still. The battle is not yours. There's no power but God. There's no activity but God. So let him have his little fun with his gun if he wants. Ah, yes, when atomic bombs are flying, everybody wants to buy a bomb shelter. And those who don't buy physical ones start to use mental ones and build a mental wall around themselves, or a mental defense against what? The activity of God? There is no other activity. Certainly the temptation, the world is giving us a temptation of atomic bombs, and the world is fearing it. Don't you ever worry about that. You can feel that as you travel the trains and planes, how the world is fearing it. Why, in a Christian world, should one fear when the whole teaching is based on God as the only activity? So, bombs can only be another temptation like germs. We in the metaphysical world aren't nearly as afraid of germs as the rest of the world, and so we don't suffer so much from them. Well, if they really were power, we would suffer from them. We would have just as many germ diseases, infectious and contagious diseases, as the world had if infection and contagion were power. But we have already come to see that there's no infection and no power in infection and contagion, so we walk in and out among it, and nothing happens. Why? Because if there is such a thing, it's the activity of God. If it isn't, it's just an appearance tempting us to believe in an activity, substance, or presence apart from God. Now, what difference does it make whether it's a tiny germ that we're fearing or a great big bomb? Both of them have the same power, and that's to kill us in human belief. Can't be too important which way it is if we're going to have to accept the belief. Now, put on the armor of oneness. Face every situation in life with that one word, one. If you're threatened with a bad activity, just smile and remember, God is the only activity. Because the only activity, there's only one activity, that's God. If you are threatened with a false sense of substance, too much or too little, smile at it. Remember, since oneness is truth, there's only one substance. There's no evil substance. There's no bad substance. There's no sick substance. There's just one substance, and that's spirit. And so it is, if your life is threatened, smile at it. There's only one life. You can only lose your sense of life by believing that there are two lives, God's life and yours. And that subjects you to any temptation or belief in all the world. But the moment you give up all sense of a life apart from God, you have entered immortality and eternality right here on earth. If you are suffering from hate, animosity, jealousy, envy, your only recourse is in the word one. If God is love, there's only one love. There can't be degrees of it. There can't be more of it and less of it. And what's more, there can't be an absence of it, since love always is infinite. Anything pertaining to God is infinite. So if love is of God, love is infinite. And so when you see hate, envy, jealousy, malice, are you seeing something that's there, or are you seeing a temptation to believe that love isn't infinite, or that there's more than one kind of love? And so it is. Put on the armor of oneness. Face every situation and every condition with the word one. One life, one soul, one mind, one being, even one body. You might even be fearing something about your body. But if you'll ever remember that there is only one body, since there's only one God to be embodied, oh, I know the appearances indicate that each one of us here has a body. And that's why we all seem to be different, some healthier, some not. Some more, some less. That's because we have accepted the belief of duality, more than one. But if there's only one God and one life, it can only be in one embodiment, and that one is the body of God. Know ye not that your body is the temple of God? It doesn't say that each one of us has a temple of God, but that our body is the temple of God. Your body, my body. The body is the temple of God. Since oneness is the truth, then there's only one body, and that's that. It really covers about 9 months' work. Gosh, by then maybe I can get back.